back in the Rambam's Mishneh Torah. We're in the laws of idolatry, and we left off in chapter 7, halakha number 11. So we'll just recap on that really quickly and then move on through the rest of chapter 7, hopefully. So the last time we talked about Asherah trees, which are poles or trees fashioned out of wood specifically for idolatrous purposes. And the last halakha talked about the shade of an Asherah tree. Is it permitted for a person to benefit from the shade of the tree? The answer is no. The shade of the tree is not permitted, but although the branches and the leaves of the tree, the shade is permitted, but it's not something that a person wants to really take advantage of. So if there's an idol or an image on the tree or on the pole and you're walking by, the halakha says it's best to move quickly if you can, to run past it, because this is like Rabbi Gordon was saying about it, this is before air conditioning. Right. So in these days the shade of the tree was the air conditioner. So move on through, and it also says that if it's at all possible to reroute your journey to go around these Asherim. Don't just stay away. It's the best policy. So number 12, halakha 12, it talks about chicks, baby birds, which do not need their mother, and nest in an Asherah. They are permitted. Permitted for what? You can take the birds for food. In other words, if they're developing feathers and they can fly on their own, they don't need their mother. That's what this means. So they're permitted. But in contrast, the chicks and eggs which need their mother are forbidden, for the Asherah is considered as if it is a base for them. Where the birds that can take care of themselves, they haul sticks and twigs from other places and make the nest on the tree, so the nest is not considered part of the tree. But if it's chicks and eggs that can't take care of themselves, the Asherah is considered a base for those creatures. So in some way, they absorb some form of the impurity that comes from the idol worship that's directed towards the tree. Okay, so the nest itself, it says, if you want to use the nest for something, it's permitted because, again, the nest itself is made of twigs that are brought from other places. Okay. So even though these chicks, okay, it says here in the commentary, the chicks are permitted, even though these chicks are permitted, one is not allowed to climb up the tree and take them in a normal manner. Rather, one must knock the chicks down with a stave and then collect them. So another commentary explains that climbing on the tree or using it as a support for a ladder would involve deriving benefit from the forbidden tree. So the whole concept here has to do with deriving benefit from an idolatrous accoutrement or an idol. It's forbidden to derive benefit from an idol that has been, especially one that's been worshipped. Okay. Halakha 13. It is forbidden to benefit from wood which one takes from the Asherah tree. Should a person have heated the oven with such wood, he must cool it off. Afterwards, he should kindle it with other permitted wood and then bake within. Should he bake bread in an oven heated in this manner without cooling it, he is forbidden to benefit from the bread. If such a loaf became mixed together with others, he must bring the value of that loaf to the Dead Sea so that he will never benefit from it. The other loaves, however, are permitted. So the thing about the Dead Sea, if you guys remember, it doesn't necessarily mean to take something to the Dead Sea. The idea of taking something to the Dead Sea is putting it at a place where it will never be used again, because the items that are brought to the Dead Sea are never used again. So why does it say the value of the loaf instead of the loaf? Well, number one, if you're going to go to the Dead Sea with a loaf of bread, it's not going to be valuable at all by the time you get there. But again, you take the value of the bread, you discard the bread because it is It's not physical. This is not a physical situation. What's the difference between a loaf of bread that's been baked in an oven with idolatrous wood versus non-idolatrous wood? Is the wood that came from the Asherah somehow physically different than any other wood? No, no. We're talking about spiritual concepts. So we're talking about spiritual impurity. The wood, if you want to say from the Asherah tree, is somehow infected with spiritual impurity from idolatrous worship. So to put it in the oven and to make heat from the wood is going to cause you to derive benefit from this idolatrous wood, which is going to, the heat is going to soak into the bread, cook the bread, and now the bread is a benefit of burning the wood.
A key phrase for all of that is deriving benefit, period.
Yes.
Because there is no difference in the wood. But the benefit, it teaches us something that Hashem wants us to so thoroughly reject about Zorah, to not even derive any benefit. Even if you can't perceive the benefit, just have nothing to do with it.
Exactly, exactly. So, yeah, again, just to reiterate what Reuven is saying here, the bread, any of these things has to do with the benefit of it. We don't want to derive any of the benefit from it at all. Okay, so there's other methods for fuel to use that you can gather. Even the dung from a kosher animal can be used for fuel.
Better than that, yeah.
I was just thinking in ancient times, people don't always move around as fast. So.
Right, but the reality with the situation with an Asherah tree is it should, in the land of Israel specifically, or any other land that the Jewish people have, conquered and taken over it, they're to tear these things down and destroy them. So we're not talking about living where you have Jewish people in the exile, in the diaspora throughout the world. It's not our duty to go around tearing down people's private property or things that belong to other governments. But specifically in the land of Israel, when the Jewish people are in control of it, and any other lands that the Jewish people are in direct control of, they govern the property, in other words, directly, and the land is under Jewish rule, these things should be torn down and destroyed and not used for anything. Such as this, like a city such as Jericho. If you remember the story of Jericho, well, Hashem commanded them that when the walls fell, that they were to kill everyone, kill all the animals, burn the whole city, and destroy all the goods in the city and not take any benefit from it because it was an idolatrous city. And exactly, and to never to even rebuild anything on that property that resembles a city. So, yes.
How would that apply today? How would I benefit or not benefit from this? It's not likely I'm going to find an Asherah pole or a tree and
right.
wood from it. So how what's the application?
So the application today, partly with this, we're going through the laws. So if we can find something to uncover that we can apply today directly, we will. But the concepts remain across the board about deriving benefit from anything that has been used in an idolatrous fashion. So that's going to be the foundation of what we're talking about today, is not deriving benefit from idolatrous accoutrements. Here specifically, it's talking about asherim, which are, again, the trees or wooden poles that are made for idols. Like you were saying, we don't really see that so much today.
What would be an accoutrement today? I guess is what I'm asking.
Okay.
Would it relate now to the Christmas tree? Possibly?
Any item that has been designated for a known form of idolatry, it would be forbidden to derive benefit from it.
I can think of something right now just came to mind. Candles. Those candles
Oh,
are
absolutely.
designed to burn to saints, or in Buddhism or whatever. Like, if you needed light or to stay warm, you would not want to use because it's designed specifically for that.
Yeah, they have a Madonna on the front of
Right,
it. Yeah.
right, yeah.
So I'm going to be a little bit direct here. There are specific accoutrements that come from certain divisions of Christian worship. Like was mentioned here, candles. You'll see the candles, and this was just spoken, so I don't know if you guys online was able to hear, so I'm going to repeat it. There's candles with effigies of different people or idolatrous types of imagery on these candles. For example, a Jewish person or even a righteous non-Jew, which falls in the similar category here, a person who's serving Hashem, whether he be Jewish or not Jewish, to derive benefit from such a thing is not permitted. So for me to invest in a company, or any of us here to invest in a company that produces these candles with these idolatrous effigies on them would not be really the ticket of the straight path. Now again, this is a little technical, but if it's the candle company that produces the candles in the little glass tube that has nothing to do with idolatry, you invest into that, that's one thing. But once it moves on to the company that slaps the sticker with the effigy, the idolatrous image on it, that we want to stay away from that. We don't want to have anything to do with things like that. You had mentioned a certain type of tree that people put in their homes for certain holidays. That may be a little controversial. For those of us that know what those things are, of course we would steer away from them as far as possible. But a lot of people really have no idea where the origins of such things come from.
Nor are they worshiping.
Of course not. Of course not. Most of your would-be modern person today that has that in their home during these holidays, they're not worshiping it. So, is it even known in the modern world as something that comes from idolatrous worship? That's a good question, right? Those of us that know better, we know,
Right.
you know, and those of us that are learning will learn. But to say that I'm not going to go to like a department store because they have these things for sale, that's a little bit different. I would, if I had any question about that, I would consult the rabbi. But everybody shops at the
Dollar store.
big box stores these days.
Don't talk about my dollar store. That's where they're
But they're really not sold for idol worship.
Exactly.
No, they're not. They're not. You're right.
They're not made or sold for idolatry.
Right.
So it's a little, I'm not going to have it in my house. I heard a comedian a while back, someone was asking him what he does, what does he do for Christmas? And he said, well, I don't really do anything for Christmas because I'm Jewish. And so the lady says, so you have kids, right? And he's like, yeah. And he's like, what do they do for Christmas? We said, well, we don't do that. We celebrate Hanukkah. It's in a similar time of the year, not always the same time, but it's nothing like Christmas. And he's telling this story about when he was growing up. He lived around a lot of non-Jews that had Christmas trees and what. And he asked his mom, hey, Mom, can we get a Christmas tree? And she said, no, but we can get a Hanukkah bush. And he said, really? And he said, can I put lights on it? And she said, I don't know. And he said, well, what kind of bush can I get? And she said, the one out in the front yard. That can be your Hanukkah bush. And he's like, so can I decorate it? And she said, oh, maybe next year. So,
Hanukkah bush. We need to remember that.
so it's just a bush out in the yard. It's not a Hanukkah bush, a Christmas tree, anything, but it was funny. That was Jerry Seinfeld was explaining this, but it was fun. But things that we know are used for idolatrous purposes, or things that we might have questions about, we may not want to be deriving benefit from it. But like you brought up the candles, that's a good example. Let's see.
I mean, the nice thing about the postmodern era, there's not a lot of idolatry like there used to be.
No, the idolatry has really been taken down for the last 2,500 years.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
the figure of it, but idolatry
Well, yeah,
Other things
idolatry as a,
Yeah.
as a concept still exists
Yeah.
in some form, yes.
Yeah, idolatry as a concept still exists, but the direct worship of idols has really tamed down in the world. There's three, what people would consider three major religions, and they're all monotheistic. Well, they appear to be.
As close as you could get by some.
Right.
All the nail salons now, most of them have a little
Buddha.
Right.
Buddha or their little rabbit, cat type thing.
Right.
Do they worship Buddha? I don't think they worship
My nail
Buddha.
salon gives them coffee
Coffee.
every morning, 2 cups.
But is that worship? I don't know what that is.
That's not an issue for us. We've talked to the rabbi about this situation
Right.
specifically. We don't go there for the purpose of the idols. We
So it
don't.
doesn't matter.
No, and even though we pay for a service, we're not paying for a service from the idol.
Right,
We're paying for a service from the people.
right.
For example, I mentioned this in a previous class. I go to a place where I get a haircut. Yes, see how nice all this area, but nothing really here. But in this area, they do a good job. There's nothing left here to cut, but
That's a Buddhist.
Right.
Is that a Buddhist haircut?
no, it's a bald man's haircut. So, anyways, the people that own the place and that own and operate the place, they're immigrants from Asia, so they have a background of Buddhism, which is fine. That's their choice, and they have little figurines and what they're at their stations. Some of them do, but so I talked to the rabbi about it directly, and he said, no, it's not a problem. We don't pray to those things. We don't acknowledge them. We're not there to get a haircut from the figurine. We're paying for a service from a person.
So he goes there too.
Yeah.
I was just checking because you said we. So.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah, must be a good place.
it is. It's really cheap. That's the best part. It's low cost.
That's what I like.
$5.90. The name of the place is $5.99 haircut.
I need to go there. That is a cheap haircut.
So
Same price for a full head of hair?
yep. Whether it's this long or missing on the top, it's the same price, $5.99.
No, that's a good price. That's
Yeah.
3 months of haircuts.
Right. So where am I going here? So,
Idols. How Buddha cut your hair.
oh yeah, thank you. So how did Buddha cut my hair? He didn't, because he doesn't do anything. So yeah, it came up about nail salons in different places where there's Asian culture that carries these types of accoutrements. As long as we're not benefiting from it or giving kavod or honor to the thing, it's a non-issue. So moving on, if it's possible. Halakha 14. If one took a piece of wood from an Asherah to use as a shuttle and wove a garment with it, it is forbidden to benefit from the garment. So we're talking about a loom, where threads of like wool or cotton or linen, yeah, thank you, material are woven together to make a garment. And there's a piece to this device called a shuttle. It's about this big. It has a point on two ends, and they use it to pull the threads through the loop. If it's made out of idolatrous wood, then the loom, the shuttle, and even the garment that's being made is forbidden to be used.
Just a question, Asherah, is that a particular tree, or is that anything that is used, any type of wood that is used for idolatry?
You mean like it versus an oak tree or a pine? No, it's not a species of a tree.
Right.
It's any species of tree that they would make into an idolatrous stave, pole, or imagery on the tree carved in it. Yeah, something like that, exactly. Let's see. So we talked about the bread. That was from the, okay, so should the garment become mixed together with other garments, he must bring the value of that garment to the Dead Sea. All the other garments, however, are permitted. So it is permissible to plant vegetables under an Asherah, whether in the summer when they need the shade or in the winter. This leniency is granted because the vegetable's growth is produced by two factors: the shade of the Asherah, which is forbidden, and the earth, which is permitted. Whenever an effect is produced by the combination of a forbidden factor and a permitted factor, it is permitted. Therefore, if a field was fertilized with fertilizer that was forbidden because of a connection with idol worship, one may sow it. So let's pause here and talk about this. In this case, what type of fertilizer would be used, do you think?
Probably cattle excrement or something.
Yeah, probably like cattle manure or horse manure or something of this fashion, or sheep or goat, whatever. So in idolatrous worship, it's common for animals to be offered to these idols. So in other words, this fertilizer that would possibly or most likely be a manure, if it comes from an animal that's been designated for idolatrous use, even the dung of it, the manure, is forbidden. But if the idolatrous person took the manure from the pen of idolatrous designated animals and fertilized the field, and then planted a crop that was permitted, then the actual crop is not forbidden. The field with the manure from the idolatrous animals, or the animals that are designated for idolatry, animals really aren't idolatrous, but once they're designated for idolatry, that's something that we can't benefit from, even from the manure. But even though someone used the manure for the field, it's saying here that the produce of the field is permitted. Because the fertilizer is forbidden, but the soil is permitted. Just much like the plants that are planted underneath the shade in the ground, under the shade of the Asherah tree. So the concept here is if you have, there's two factors. Whenever an effect is produced by the combination of a forbidden factor and a permitted factor, the effect is permitted. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Similarly, the meat of a cow that was fed with beans that were forbidden because of connection with idol worship, it may be eaten. So if it's idolatry beans and the cow eats the beans, it doesn't make the cow forbidden. So the same principle applies in other similar situations. So first we have the shade of the Asherah tree and the soil. The soil is permitted, the shade is not. Then you have a fertilized field. The soil is permitted, the fertilizer is not permitted. And the third one, you have the beans and the cattle. The beans are forbidden and the cow is permitted. So in all three of those types of situations, in any similar situations, a mixture of, in this type of thing, the effect of that mixture is permitted.
Idle beans and rice. That sounds like
Idle beans and rice.
sounds like a Cajun dish, right?
Yeah.
Idle beans.
Zara beans, huh?
Zara beans. Yeah, that even sounds more fancy. You know?
Yeah.
More coloring.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this guy. He's wanting to get married. So he wants his mother to approve of his wife. So he goes out on a date with a brunette, and he brings her home to mom. Says, Ema, I want to get married, but I want you to help me choose my wife. So he brings the brunette, and they have dinner and blah, blah, blah. Then he sets up a date with a blonde lady, and he brings her home to mom, and mom says, okay, thank you. And then the third one is a redheaded lady. And they sit down and have dinner and so on and so forth, and everything settles down. And then he says, okay, mom, I really need you to help me to pick out my wife here. And she says, it's going to be the redhead. And he says, how do you know? And she says, because that's the one that I don't like.
That's funny. I've not heard that one. Have you? I have never. That's a good one. I'm putting that down. That's really good.
Okay. It is not for Halakha 15. It is not forbidden to benefit from meat, wine, and fruits that were prepared as offerings for idols. So let's notate here the word prepared as offerings. Although they were brought into the temple of a false deity, they are not prohibited until they are actually brought as offerings. So Jimmy prepares the wine and the meat, and his intent is to bring it to the idols. He brings it to the temple, but he doesn't offer it. He takes it back out. It's permitted. Jimmy takes the wine and the meat into the temple. And this is just some obscure Jimmy. It's no one specific. So anyway, he takes it in to the temple, offers it to the idols. Now it is forbidden at any time. It's not redeemable.
Also, that same principle lies with designated offerings to Hashem. It says that if it's designated, you can't use it for anything else.
Even if it hasn't been offered yet.
Correct. So it's like, that is to show you how important it is, your gift that you bring or the offerings you bring. Once it's designated, you can derive no benefit from it. It's
Right.
only for the benefit of Hashem.
Yes, exactly. So if you guys didn't hear that online, when something is designated to be an offering to Hashem, even though it hasn't been offered yet, it's already designated. It is forbidden to be used for anything else. It's already considered set apart or holy, if you would. So once they are brought as offerings, their status changes, and they remain forbidden forever, even if they were later removed from the temple. So Torah law forbids benefiting from anything that is found in a temple of a false deity, even water or salt. Okay, so if Jimmy goes into the temple without anything, for example, and he goes inside and there's a bucket of salt or a bucket of water or anything for that matter that someone else brought in there, he didn't bring it, it's forbidden to be used. He can't take it out and use it for something else. If a person eats even the slightest amount from such substances, he is punished by lashing. So he gets a beat down, but he doesn't get killed. I don't want to deal with either one of those. And again, this only applies when the Sanhedrin is standing in a place where Jewish law is the prevalent ruling over the land. This is not something that we incite today amongst ourselves. We don't beat people for doing these things. Holocaust 16. The following laws apply when a person finds garments, utensils, or money placed on the head of an idol. If he finds them placed in a derisive manner, which is a dishonorable manner, like for example, they walk in and they use it for a coat hanger. Those items are permitted. If he finds them placed in a deferential manner, they are forbidden. So if it's placed in a way that honors this idol, it's forbidden to be used. So what is implied if one finds a purse hanging around its neck, folded garments placed on its head, or a utensil overturned on its head? They are permitted because they were placed in a derisive manner. The same applies to other similar situations. If in contrast, if one finds an object of a type which is used for an offering for the temple altar on the head of an idol, it is forbidden. So if it's something that beautifies or honors this idol, it's not permitted to use it. So when does the above apply? When one finds such articles outside its usual place of worship. When however, one finds such articles within the idol's place of worship, regardless whether it was placed in a derisive manner or in a deferential manner, or whether it is of the types of objects used as sacrifices for the temple altar. Any article found within such a structure, even water or salt, becomes forbidden. Different laws apply regarding Peor and Markulis. Peor was the deity that's mentioned in the Torah, where people would defecate in front of it in order to honor it. Markulis, they would throw stones at it. That was the manner of worship towards this thing. So it is forbidden to benefit anything that is found together with them, whether it is found in their temple or outside of it. Similarly, with regard to the stones found near a symbol of Markulis. If a stone appears to be together with it, it is forbidden to benefit from it. Because once again, the known method of worship for Markulis is to throw stones at it. 17. When a shrine of a false deity possesses a bathhouse or a garden, benefit may be derived from it, providing one does not offer appreciation in return. If one must offer appreciation, it is forbidden. If the garden or bathhouse is mutually owned by the shrine and another entity, one may derive benefit from it, even if one provides its priests with appreciation. One may not, however, pay a fee. And there's a whole discussion in the Talmud about this. There's a discussion between a rabbi and a layperson concerning a bathhouse that has, in the middle of the bathhouse, wherever all the men go to wash, there's a big idol in the middle of it. And he's like, how is this permitted? Well, because he's not there to honor the idol, he's there to take a bath.
So as long as he doesn't pay for it,
Right,
he's fine.
exactly.
Of course, that was during the age that rarely people had bathrooms to shower in.
Yes.
So everything was public.
Exactly. It's public bathhouse like in Roman times. And you know how the Romans did it. Everything they built, they put their idols
Right.
into it. So, let's see here. Two more, and we'll be finished with chapter 7. Halakha 18. It is permitted to bathe in a bathhouse even though an idol is located within, because it is placed there for aesthetic purposes and not to be served. This leniency can be inferred from the use by Deuteronomy 12:2 of the term their gods. For example, the prohibition applies when they treat them as gods and not when they humiliate them, such as an instance where the idol stands over the sewage pipe and they use the bathroom before it. Should the idol's worship involve such activities, it is forbidden to enter the bathhouse. So if the act of using the restroom or taking a bath is the form of worship towards the idol, then it's forbidden to go in the bathhouse. Number 19, it is permitted to benefit from an animal slaughtered using a knife. A knife forbidden because of its connection to idol worship, because one is detracting from the animal's value. So the idolatrous knife makes the animal less valuable. So one can benefit from the animal. If the animal is in danger of dying, it is forbidden because one is enhancing its value. So you have a sick animal that's in danger of dying, to slaughter it with this knife is going to enhance the value of it, so now the animal's forbidden. And this improvement involves benefit from an accessory of idol worship. Similarly, it is forbidden to cut meat with such a knife because one is enhancing its value. Should one cut with a destructive intent, causing a loss, the meat is permitted. So if you're going to cut ribeyes with it, or some nice cut of meat, that's not permitted. But if you're just cutting it up and it destroys the most favorable part of the meat that people like in a certain cut, then the meat's permitted. Okay. So when you go to your butcher, just ask them if they've slaughtered anything to their false gods lately with the knife, and then you know how to handle the meat.
And they'll say, what?
Exactly. They would say, what? Luckily for us in the U.S., there's only two entities that really use knives for slaughter. One of them is Jewish people, and the other one's Islamic people.
Right.
And what do you say, for the righteous non-Jew, both of these meats are permitted.
Right.
It's completely permitted. It's actually preferred if you can find it. So that sums up chapter 7. Yay! So thank you everyone for joining us today. Now we're going to continue in our group discussion. We look forward to seeing you next time. Your comments or questions are always welcome on the comment section of the videos. Thank you.